Hi, thank you for joining us. I'm Kim Edmonds, and this is Pastor Mike Stinson. And he's been very good about answering some of my questions, and I'm just assuming that if I have some of these questions, maybe other people do too. And today I'm going to get him to explain to us, me mostly, why we call it Maundy Thursday. Pastor?
Okay. Maundy is a transliteration. That means you start with the original language and then you make up a word in another language. Maundy comes from the Latin word mandatum, and it means the command. And I think it's the only time, really, that Jesus spoke to the apostles and speaks to us and gave us a command. I'm going to read a scripture from John chapter 13. And it says in verse 6, he came to Simon Peter, who said to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? Jesus answered, you do not know now what I am doing, but later you will understand. Peter said to him, you will never wash my feet. Jesus answered, unless I wash you, you have no share with me. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. I like Peter. He's one of those all-in guys. Jesus said to him, one who has bathed does not need to wash except for the feet, but is entirely clean. And you are clean, though not all of you. For he knew who was to betray him. For this reason he said, not all of you are clean. If you remember our discussion yesterday, we talked about Judas the betrayer. So after he had washed their feet, had put on his robe, and had returned to the table, he said to them, do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set you an example, that you also should do as I have done to you. Very truly, I tell you, servants are not greater than their master, nor are messengers greater than the one who sent them. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them. I hope you caught the language here in the New Revised Standard Version where Jesus told them that they should. They should treat each other with this kind of deference. And that is the nature of command, should and should not. He's trying to tell them that. So the elements that are taking place here in the upper room on the night before the night where he was crucified, they shared a meal. We recognize that meal as the Passover meal. It was the Seder meal that the Jewish families practiced each year from the time of the Exodus, 1300 years BC, way before Christ. God instituted a process for the Jews to follow every year to remember the Passover. Jesus is going through that very meal with the 12 apostles when he turns aside and he does two things that are differently. One is he wraps himself with a towel, takes a basin, and washes the feet of the apostles. And the second thing is he takes the bread and the cup, and he says, this is a new covenant. So there was the meal that they shared, and then there was a foot washing that they shared, and now there comes a command. And the command is that they should do this to one another. And then he leads them into a new practice that they should do often in order to remember him and remember what he said, to obey the command.
Okay. just knowing what the word means really puts a new light on that scripture.
Yes.
Because I never really thought of that as a command or as really the only, up until the Great Commission. That's the only time he commanded them to do anything.
Well, I think a part of the fallen nature, a part of the fallen human nature, is that we resist from our flesh, from our sinful nature, we resist loving others. We resist loving away from ourselves. And I think I can understand that. I like for people to lavish love on me at my birthday, at Christmas time, family gatherings. I just cherish to feel and sense somebody's love. But when Jesus takes the towel and basin and turns from his agenda and makes their feet his new agenda, he's really exempling something to us. And then uses the should, ought not, should not, mandatum. He just nails it down and tells the 12, you should do this for one another. And it comes down to love. In my faith experience, one of the humblest things I've ever done, and it was in a little country church where they had a tradition, and the women went over to one side of the altar, the men went over to the, and there was a big chair with basins of water in front of them, and one of the men graciously took your shoes off. Oh, it was hard to go through that. One of the women took my wife's shoes off, and you put your feet in the basin, then each man would rub your feet to clean them. And very intimate, very hard for me to experience, but very much like what took place in the upper room. And I don't know that a physical experience like that, like the one I described, or even what Jesus did, is the command as much as the motivation toward one another deep inside is the command. And if we ever weary of that, if we're trying to be a Christian and we've lost the sensitivity to love people, no matter how unlovely they become, the rebellious teenager, the person with alcoholic or drug problems, or the person who upsets the society and the community of saints with negative behavior. If we ever get to the place where we get weary of loving the unlovely, to the place that we're patient with them and we want to maintain connection and relationship, then we're struggling with obeying the Lord's command.
So really it gets down to showing respect, showing kindness, not so much me to you, not that I shouldn't, but you might be easier for me than that person who gets under my skin.
Yes, because Judas was there and his feet were washed by the master. So when the master says, you should do this.
And he knew.
Yeah. He knew.
Wow. Well, thank you for explaining that, because I never knew what that term meant. I had heard it called that for as long as I can remember. So now we know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Join us again as Pastor Mike explains some more things the next time. We are making this available on Facebook and on YouTube, and we'll do our best to put the scriptures in the notes that come with both. Thank you.